Good evening. Welcome to our show, Friendly AI. This is your host, Nada El Assal. Well, if you've been watching TV shows, movies, or even just following social media, you probably came across the term artificial intelligence, or AI. Depending on where you heard it, this might bring up different pictures in your mind. Maybe pictures of robots, or the last science fiction movie you've watched. But today we want to really explore what artificial intelligence means, as well as explore its different applications, focusing on its application in helping organizations achieve a social mission and improve their communities. To help us explore these topics, we have our guests today. We'll start with Cheyenne Durudi, who is a PhD student in computer science at the Carnegie Mellon University. We'll also speak with Varun Arora, who is the founder of Open Curriculum, and Jared Chung, who's the founder and executive director of careervillage.org. But first, let's start with Cheyenne. Hi, Cheyenne.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for inviting me.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Cheyenne Durudi. I'm currently completing my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University. And I mainly work in the areas of artificial intelligence, but with a strong interest in applications in education and helping people learn.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. If you were to explain what artificial intelligence means in very simple terms, what would you say?
So artificial intelligence is basically the study of how to get computers to solve problems in a way that exhibits intelligent behaviors. So if we think of, for example, what makes humans intelligent, what are some of the things that we do that, people would say, oh, that requires intelligence? For example, problem solving, language, talking to other humans, and learning. Those are some things that is characterized as human intelligence. And how can we get computers to tackle some of those problems and be able to exhibit those behaviors which we call intelligent?
Wow, interesting. So it's a type of software, right? It's a special kind of software,
yes,
I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
So what is so special about it, relative to other software?
Yeah, I guess the distinction is sometimes somewhat arbitrary because some software, can do very complex things, but we wouldn't necessarily call it intelligence because it's not really things that maybe as humans we find we don't see them as intelligent behavior. But some of the things that make AI more specific, for example, one area of AI is concerned with learning, where it can learn with data and it can learn to change its behavior over time. Which traditional software, it's fixed. The programmer tells the computer what to do, and it will follow that procedure. Yeah. But in learning, you initially give it a program, it follows that program, but over time the program can sort of evolve and do things that the original software developer didn't even anticipate.
Okay.
But another, an interesting distinction is that sometimes there have been a few remarks by people in the field of AI and others that sometimes when AI solves a new problem, it's no longer seen as AI because we no longer might see it as intelligent. And if you think back about things that computers can do, for example, doing complex calculations, nobody calls that AI because computers were able to do that before AI even existed, even though if you think about it, computers can do that much better than humans. So there is a little bit of an arbitrary nature.
I see. So then, briefly, can you tell me what are other applications of AI?
Yeah, so there are a variety of applications. Nowadays in the news, one popular one, for example, is self-driving cars.
Okay.
And I think that's something that's really going to potentially change society in the next few years. And then a lot of the other applications that have been really promising in recent years aren't things that are necessarily have social impact, but for example, solving games like Go, which is an ancient game. And for a long time, humans were much better, like expert human players were much better than computers, and people didn't anticipate that in recent years that we would have artificial intelligent agents that can beat even the best human players.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for being here and telling us about artificial intelligence.
Sure, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so next we will explore how artificial intelligence has been helping organizations in the field of education specifically. And so Open Curriculum is a free software tool for K-12 teachers to help them quickly design differentiated and aligned lesson plans and activities. So let's watch this introductory movie, and then we'll be back with our next guest.
Open Curriculum asks you a series of simple questions to bring your plan to life. Questions like, what skill level are we working with? Or what might our students find confusing? Based on every answer, it asks you a follow-up question and makes adaptive recommendations to fill the gaps in your plan. At the same time, it suggests high-quality, pre-vetted lessons, instructional ideas, and learning activities that meet your specific needs. It also shows you student performance data, checks against state standards and learning outcomes, and even allows you to link back to unit plans on a curriculum map. Over time, Open Curriculum learns how you plan and gets better at making recommendations. It even allows you to completely customize these steps for the next lesson. That's Open Curriculum.
I would like to welcome to our show our next guest, Varun Arora, who is the founder of Open Curriculum. Hi, Varun.
Hi, Nada.
How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me here.
Great. So can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Varun. I founded Open Curriculum. Several years ago, I realized that teachers around the world are spending a huge amount of time every day trying to figure out how to improve their student success the next day. And what they do to figure this out is they're building lesson plans. And this is a very complex process because usually it involves a bunch of curriculum writers and publishers to get together and think about the complexities of the material that students have to learn and their needs at that time. At the same time, you see the situation where the UN estimates that over 250 million students in classrooms are not learning. And so you see this massive disconnect between what's happening within the classroom and what the teachers need to do. And so we found this beautiful opportunity of finding a way to influence or help teachers build better curriculum and teach better with better lesson plans through a simple online tool, which builds on these complicated technologies, but the teacher doesn't know. For them, it's a simple AI assistant that's helping them construct a better teaching experience.
Very interesting. So how many users or teachers do you have currently on your platform?
Right. So we have over 10,000 teachers, and we haven't even released this publicly. Okay. So we're spending a lot of time on getting it right. We can't release a tool or a service for teachers which does not improve efficacy. And that takes time, and that takes diligence, practice, and being inside classrooms, trying to figure out how it's influencing instruction. Because what we're competing against is master teachers and advisors that have built expertise over 20, 30 years. Yeah. And to replace that is not easy.
For sure. Well, so then now that we have a clear picture of what Open Curriculum is, where does AI play a role there?
Sure. So, AI is a large and complex field. We specifically focus on what was a boring AI aspect several years ago. Today, we're not talking about it as much, but it's called expert systems. Okay. What expert systems are is trying to distill the knowledge of the smart people of the world. So one of the things you expect software to do for you is to achieve or to do things faster than most humans can around you. Right? And so in AI, there's a subdomain called knowledge, reasoning, and representation. And one of the focuses is understanding educational material. And when you bring these two together, you realize that one of the things we can do with expert systems is distill 30, 40, 50, 60 years of educational research into an experience that feels like someone who understands this research, a master AI that has gone through thousands of papers and tens of thousands of books, can distill this when the teacher needs advice. And so we distill that in a very simple form, exactly when the teachers need it. And I think that's a revolutionary concept, in my opinion. And it'll take a while before we nail it, but it'll be beautiful when we can.
That's really nice. So, what was the impact of you using AI in that way as an expert teacher, basically?
Right. So we're really yet to see the impact eventually. The impact will come from changing the way teachers approach instruction and curriculum. For us, seeing very small signs of how teachers change what they do every day because of what they learned through the system, the advice they got. Usually you're trying to wonder, every school district is asking this hard question. how do we put a master teacher, a perfect teacher, a veteran teacher who's taught for 40 years, and support every single individual teacher. And so when we can distill some of those great ideas, that great ways of supporting teachers, and support every single teacher within the confines of their homes, really, with their computer, I think that's when we'll see the real impact. But we're yet to see that today.
I see. So I know you're also in the process of writing a book about that very topic. What's the title of that book?
Right. So the working title right now is AI in K-12 Teaching and Learning.
Okay.
And the focus of the book is really simply we've made massive advancements in AI, specifically machine learning, in the past 10, 20 years. And some of these ideas are not that accessible to teachers or school principals, who really have to kind of deal with this massive change in an environment where everyone is saying AI is going to change or replace you or change the way you teach and learn, right? So for me, the big idea was, can I take some of those really complex ideas, which really smart people like Cheyenne write about, and distill them down into ways that teachers can understand, so that we're not the people who make decisions for teachers on which AI is good for them or not. They should be in the front, in the driver's seat, controlling it, because they understand every aspect of it. It may be from a surface level.
Yeah, yeah. So then, are you mentioning any of your, learnings out of open curriculum in that book? Are you referring to practical examples and stories that you've gone through open curriculum?
So I have to be unbiased with this book.
Okay.
So I actually explicitly do not include any aspects of open curriculum, but I do build on and pick up examples and anecdotes from experiences of AI nonprofits and for-profits who work in the education field.
Yeah.
And when I describe to teachers, here's a particular technique, here's a particular way you can think about what machine learning, or this aspect of machine learning, can influence the way you approach your students, or what it might look like in the future.
Yeah.
I give these stories about tools and technologies that have existed and the impact they have had. So the teacher can really contextualize this rather abstract idea by thinking about this tool. Oh, they use this app on their phone, or they took a photo and it changed filters automatically, right? It's something that they can relate to.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say I am an organization working in the education field. I'm very convinced that AI will be able to help me achieve my mission. Where do I start? What do I do, to get AI integrated into my tool, into my platform?
Right. So if we asked the same question about 5 or 10 years ago, you would be lost. You would have to really, hire very expensive individuals, look for really complex tool sets that weren't openly available, look for data sets, which are really important aspect of machine learning. Yeah. But today, the landscape is gradually changing. And I'll give you an example of how it's changing. You're moving away from technologies or services in which you required a human to handcraft every aspect of the AI. And that would mean that it would be inaccessible to most organizations in the world.
Right.
If we're really talking about nonprofits benefiting from AI, we have to make the tools to make them accessible, right?
Yeah.
And what's happened as a result of this, massive growth of interest from the community is that those tools have become increasingly open. The data sets have been increasingly open. But I think the most interesting thing that we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years is the mechanisms in which we create the AI will become open and accessible to the average person. Amazon's doing great work in this. Google has done great work with, AutoML, something called AutoDL from Baidu. Increasingly, you will see AI become more democratic, the process of creation of AI. And we're all excited about that.
That's great. So it seems like although these tools are becoming increasingly open source, you probably still need someone with an expertise and knowledge in that field. What was it in open curriculum? Did you have that AI expertise in the team already? Did you go and find out, find a person to hire with that expertise? How did it go for you?
So I think the most beautiful thing about how we approached AI is there was never a point within the organization when we said we want AI because it's hot and everyone's talking about it. And I think that is something that I want people to be really careful with. Just because it's interesting, just because it's out there, just because nonprofits are being asked and given free services around AI, that they should use AI. We had a very natural understanding of the problem. And that's what I want people to focus on is, if you genuinely believe that your capacity to do things, the magnitude of it can be 10x, right?
Yeah.
That's when you actually invest and find people. We knew we were building a system in which we had to transfer this massive knowledge and understanding into a simple system, and we were just building this thing that was helpful. And turns out the mechanisms you use are, basically AI.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are a lot of positive things that came out of using AI. Do you have takeaways that are, this is what's not useful about AI, or these are, best practices for things that you shouldn't be doing?
I think there are many. I think they're published widely. I'll talk about one aspect which is really important to understand. For anyone who's not fully in the process of creating AI, AI is only as smart as what it learns from the world. The world is full of biases and unfair aspects, right? We have we have lenses, the text that we write, the video that we make, all reflects human error and biases, right? And what we really want our AI to do is reflect a reality, a beautiful world that we actually don't have. So one of the mistakes that people who don't understand the ethics of AI will constantly make is that they won't understand that the data reflects biases, and their eventual AI now sounds like that 36-year-old woman when they wanted to sound like an 18-year-old male, right?
I see. So don't ask from AI things more than what we as humans have, right?
Already do, exactly, or what our data sets represent, that's right.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're really looking forward to your book.
Thank
And briefly, what's next for Open Curriculum?
We're just really trying to nail this expert experience for teachers. We call it Maya. It feels like you're interacting with a human on the other side.
Yeah.
And to get this out in as many teachers' hands we're starting off with English language arts for high school. We want to nail math, we want to nail social studies, we want to nail science. It's a lot of work.
Wow.
And we want to do this I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It has been really great hearing about Open Curriculum. Good luck.
Thank you,
and
Nada.
thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.
So in the final segment of our show, we will explore a different way artificial intelligence is helping further organizations achieve a social impact. So careervillage.org is a web platform that uses crowdsourcing to provide personal career guidance to students at massive scale. Let's watch this introductory video, and we'll be back with our final guest today.
So we all know that it's very hard for young people to get ready for careers. Among other things, there are almost 500 students for every high school counselor in this country. And that means that if you're an individual student, you get on average just 8 minutes one-on-one with a counselor each year. That's not enough time for you to begin preparing for your future. And if you're a young person living in a low-income community or in an immigrant family, or you're just underrepresented in the occupation you're trying to get into, you may not have anywhere else to turn. You might not have a network that you can actually draw upon to find somebody who's doing your dream job who can answer your questions. Now, that was me when I was a kid. But what if we could reverse that ratio?
Let me welcome our final guest today, Jared Chung. Hi, Jared.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm one of the founders of Career Village. I'm the executive director. And careervillage.org is a nonprofit that crowdsources career advice for youth to really democratize access.
Wow. So how did that idea come about? Like, was that your idea, or how did that?
Well, it's I'll say that the lack of access to career advice is something that a lot of people are quite aware of. We're not the first to look at career guidance and navigation for youth and say this is a big, big problem that's blocking young people from preparing for their futures. But for me, it did come from personal experience. I mean, for me as a young person, I grew up in New York City, went through the public school system, and I had a very overloaded guidance counselor. And so as a young person trying to figure out how to make ends meet after education, I was really looking everywhere I could to try to get career advice. And I did bring that experience with me into my career. And at some point when I was learning to program, and saw amazing crowdsourced communities out there helping people prepare for all kinds of things, learning how to program or other things. I we sort of connected the two and realized that this is something that we could do for youth to help them prepare for careers as well at really, really large scale for those who don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah. So what sorts of questions do students ask on your platform?
Oh, we get everything. I mean, as much as we get as a wide variety of questions as youth have interest, which is just huge. And one of the promises we make to the students is that we will get any question about any career answered. And with crowdsourcing, we can deliver on that.
So I guess then this other part of the system, which is the professionals who volunteer to answer those questions.
The crowd, right.
Yeah, what motivates them?
Well, I mean, I'll say there are 26,000 volunteers right now who are signed up and giving career advice to the students. And all of the 26,000 are really there fundamentally for the same reason.
Yeah.
They remember what it was like as a young person to not know how to achieve your goals. And so they're just there to give back. They're not in it for anything else than that. And every time we talk to them, it truly is a service opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's an easy one for them because, look, they already know the answer. And they already have that job. And so answering a student's question with crowdsourcing means it's a 5-minute activity. It's something easy for you to be able to do. Have a really big impact for the students, and they see that. So they're really doing it just purely altruism, purely a chance for them to help and give back.
Amazing. So let's get a little bit into the AI part of things.
Big deal for us.
Yeah, where is it now?
Yeah.
And where do you envision AI coming in the future?
Yeah, well, we've already been doing some very exciting stuff over the past year and a half with specifically machine learning as an aspect of AI that we apply. We started off with some of the easy stuff. So taking things that were very operationally intensive for our staff, very small staff, right? We have to make good use of their time. So taking things that are very operationally intensive, but that are easy for them to do, and using that data that we have to train models that will allow us to take that work off their plate and allow them to work on other more important stuff. And so that we rolled out our first machine learning feature about a year and a half ago, and it has already saved our staff a lot of time. But moving forward, it's not really about as much about efficiency of operations. Moving forward, it's about doing things better than we can do with our staff. For us, the most important use case for AI in our work is we have this big community, 26,000 volunteers. So far, we've helped 3.5 million young people get career advice. Amazing. This community is very large, but it's continuing to grow. How do we do a good job of matching the advisors, the volunteers, to the right questions where they can have the most impact at larger scale and do it even better than the systems that we already have in place? For us, machine learning is a big piece of the answer to that. And so making sure that everybody that every volunteer has the best opportunity possible for them to have an impact, and for the students, making sure that they're getting career advice from people who are just absolutely perfect for them to get advice from, help them move as far as they can.
I see. So what kind of information is that machine learning model using to better match students to professionals?
Yeah, well, we have to gather information about the questions they're asking, really learn what those questions represent, and allow the computer to not just see them as a collection of words, but to really understand what the intent is behind that. Look at the advice that's been given by all the volunteers in the past. Again, really understand the content that's within that. And then look at the information about what makes our students really appreciate the content that's in there. What drives our volunteers to be most engaged. And so we learn from history. But as you're doing that, it's very important to recognize that as you're learning from history, you have to be very conscious of the systems that history brings with it. And so that brings us to sort of one of the important things that we think about with regard to AI, especially in social impact work, I would say as well, just even in the private sector, is you got to think about these things, is making sure that you're pointing your AI at the right questions. If you point it at a question that says, how can we take a beautiful, perfect system that exists today and apply it to the future, you better be sure that the system you have today is beautiful and perfect and meritocratic and just. And if it's not, then you have to design your question. You have to point your AI at a question that is that's more about what you want the world to look like than it is like what the world looks like now. That's a tricky thing, but it's an
It
important
is.
thing. And when you're designing, at the very first stage of it, what am I pointing my AI at?
Well, you mentioned your staff. How did you start? Did you have AI expertise in your staff to do
I
all
didn't.
that, or
Personally, I didn't.
Okay.
But I will say that the resources that are available now are quite remarkable. It is amazing how quickly AI, and specifically machine learning especially, is becoming more and more accessible. I built the first model that we ran in machine learn model, and worked with my team to roll that one out. And I mean, you can take some of these training programs now, these tutorials that are out there, and you can be classifying images and working with large-scale text and tabular data in hours, provided you have some basic programming experience. But I think that's important. You no longer really have to go through extensive math or statistical training in order to be able to get started with applied machine learning. You can come from a programming background, and that really opens up machine learning to a lot more folks. And it's true that in time, that machine learning, the ability to build machine learning machine learning models or AI, applied AI, really is getting spread around. The tools that are being made right now are really amazing, and you won't really have to be a programmer pretty soon to be able to build your own machine learning models. In fact, technically, you don't have to do it. You don't have to be a programmer already if you use the right tool sets.
so it's becoming more and more accessible, and
Certainly is.
and you know, approach. Nonprofits could, you know, are becoming closer to being able to just
Yeah.
use it right away, you know,
Absolutely. I think
off the shelf.
often folks think of AI and machine learning as something that big business uses. And I'm sure every big business is
Yes.
working on it right
Yes.
now, right? And they're trying to roll it out as far as they can.
Yeah.
But I think it's really underplayed how small business, how nonprofits, individuals who are just working for a cause that they believe in,
Yeah.
these tools are very, very, very powerful. Now, you got to have data. If you have access to data, you can find that data, or you can request that data, or you Freedom of Information Act your way to that data, or whatever it is, and get it labeled, you can get some pretty powerful stuff that you can roll out already.
Yeah. So, you know, what's next for Career Village? What are you working on?
We're working on expanding the community.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at what the community has been able to achieve so far, at how big it has become, and the tenor of it is just like wonderful and awesome. We want to see it expand because we have 3.5 million learners so far we've been able to serve, but there are so many tens of millions more that we need to serve here just in this country.
For sure.
And then around the world. So we want to continue to see it expand and make better use of the platform that we have to be able to empower them.
Good luck. That
Thank you
sounds
very
like a
much.
great mission. I wish you all the best.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here and talking to us about careervillage.org. And thank you so much for tuning in. Today we've explored what artificial intelligence means and how it has been helping different organizations have a social impact. Thank you and have a good evening.